I can see that. I can see that. Another thing about that, I think he could have coexisted with Michael Redd in the backcourt. I really think he could have. One player you saw he could not coexist with was Monte Ellis.
Yeah.
He couldn't coexist with him. But if you had a chance to have a healthy team there, because you would have had Michael Redd, Andrew Bogut was healthy most of that year, but he had a bad injury at the end of the year that pretty much kind of messed him up for a lot of the rest of his career. He became a good role player with Golden State, if you remember. He was kind of a 5 points a game, dirty garbage big man, but he wasn't what he was, garbage work big man, but he wasn't what he was in Milwaukee.
Yeah, he wasn't the number one pick back then. Like, he didn't play like a number one pick at that time, for sure.
Yeah, he was, but that was the thing. Like, just, I think that injury really sapped him of some of his abilities. But see, that 2009, 2010 team, that team had a potential for a future. The only thing about that, though, is how much of a ceiling did they have? And the reason I asked that is because that was around the time the Celtics were still together with KG, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce, and Rajon Rondo, of course, came up too. And then, of course, in that offseason, the Heat, the team that's known as the Heatles, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, they formed.
Yeah.
So even if that team was healthy, I just don't see that team ever having a finals appearance in them. They would have been tough, but
I think they would have been a team very similar to the Atlanta Hawks, like of the past couple of years, where they'll get and they can give some teams some fits in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, they can't win 4 games in a row against any of those, or 4 games period in the series against any of those dominant teams. They wouldn't have had a chance just because of, one, the size, because Brandon Jennings being small hurt him a lot. He couldn't defend.
And not just that, and it wasn't just small, like it wasn't just short, he was thin too. He was real thin. Like, and he never bulked up, which brought a question mark for me. And that was, sure, he came back to Milwaukee. He warmed up to the city. He was part of the championship parade and everything. He and Michael Redd both were. But what you remember at that time, he didn't really want to play here. And It could have been the system, or it could have just been that at that time he didn't really like Milwaukee, and then he maybe warmed up to it later after he left here. Because remember, after he left here, he didn't really get his wish. He wanted to go play in LA. I think he had a tweet saying LA, here we come, or something like that. Yep. But that never happened. He ended up playing in Detroit, which was an even worse situation than here, arguably.
Sure.
Yeah, when they tried to get Josh Smith to play small forward, I could laugh all day at that one. Yeah.
And I think I agree with you on that. I think that he's starting to come back to Milwaukee. It's a little bit, I don't want to say opportunistic in that, but the Bucks in 6 thing kind of brought him back
very much
from that Heat series. But the big thing I think with him when he was here, he was too much into the party life. I know he was dating Tiana Taylor. He was in the party life. He was a celebrity in a small market, and I think that hurt him because he wasn't focused on basketball while he was here. And you can see later in his career, it kind of carried it throughout his career. I would say a good comparison is kind of Larry Sanders-ish, where like his main focus was not basketball. And I think if he focused in on basketball, because you see like somebody like Giannis, when he focused in on basketball, we saw Giannis's physical body change in the first 3 years of him being here. And I think that's the thing that he missed. Say it again?
Giannis was a stick when he was a rookie.
He was a child when he got here. He looked like a teenager. He was a teenager, I think, but he looked like a 14-year-old. And then the next 2 years, he was a grown man. That's a testament to his work ethic, but it's also that it was where his focus was. His focus was strictly on basketball, being here. And being in a smaller market, you especially a guy like Brandon Jennings coming in, I remember around those days when that was like the post-college days or in the college days of me coming back and forth and like still being out and being in like in the Milwaukee like club scene and like that, you would see him out more than any other Bucks player around. And whenever
I saw him out downtown a couple times,
and that's a problem. Like that's a major problem when your star or your potential star is out partying. I'm like, dude, you should be in the gym because we need you to be able to play basketball. Like I think he was brought more into the celebrity life of it.
Yeah, that's true. And the truth is, and the thing is, you mentioned that, and I mentioned that LA Here We Come thing. There you go. I mean, you want to be a celebrity. That's where you got to play. I mean, because you play in Milwaukee, your celebrity potential only goes so far in a city in a blue collar city like Milwaukee.
Exactly. And then we were a super small market at that time too. Like
Still are,
Giannis kind of
despite
raised
what
our profile, but we were a super small market. It was really no difference between like us and like Detroit or like before like OKC or like that. It was like one of those super tiny markets where
I think Milwaukee was the smallest market in the league at that time, really.
see, and that's what I mean. Like you can't be like that, and you can't conduct yourself like that in a smaller market because one, you have the hugest spotlight in the world on you. So whatever he did here, everybody knew.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it was just, and the thing is, it just eventually didn't work out. The Bucks just they weren't able to gain any traction. You mentioned Larry Sanders. That was a good name too, because that was a player who really looked like he was the center of the future. But then honestly, that's kind of a dicey one to get into because it's like you never know what was going on in his head during that time. Obviously he got suspended for weed, but he also just lost his passion for basketball. And sometimes that happens in life. Like you could be doing something you love and you could be great at it, and then you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think that's what happened to him.
And I think I saw also on the All the Smoke podcast. It was one of the podcasts of the NBA players. I think it was Steven Jackson's podcast. He talked about it, and Larry Sanders or somebody. He talked about it, and he talked about he felt like property and not like a person. And I can definitely see that from his angle because he got so much money, and as an organization, I would put a lot of responsibility on that guy. I'm going to pay him that amount of money he got paid in a smaller market. And so he said that was the main reason that he wanted to leave. He was like, because I couldn't, my kid's at the hospital, I got to go, and I get a call like, well, you have to be here at this certain time. And I think it's a kind of a mindset difference than like most NBA players now, or even around that time where like it was their job and that was their number one priority. I don't think basketball was Larry Sanders' number one priority, which is not good or not bad or good, or it's kind of indifferent in that. But it's just like you said, I think that may have led to him losing the love of the game because you saw the drop off.
Right, exactly. And it was so dramatic. It was so drastic too. Cause that 2012-13 season, that was the last year that Ellis and Jennings were together. That was the year where Jennings made the proclamation, Bucks in 6, only to get swept by all double digits. But we knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, it was hopeful taken by him. I'll give him that. It was definitely hopeful taken.
Yeah, hey, you got to be a competitor. But you think like because that team though, because you had those two who didn't fit really together, but they still put up numbers, but they just didn't fit in the backcourt together. But Larry Sanders, that was his breakout year. He averaged like 9 point some. It was like 9 and 9, something like that. He also had like a couple blocks in there. I'm actually going to those stats right now.
Yeah, he was. I remember Larry Sanders being that he was a true big man, where he legitimately held down the paint, and it freed up a lot of stuff for the guards because you can defend a lot tighter if you know you got a big guy behind you that's going to defend the basket like that.
Yep, 9.8 points, 9.5 boards, 2.8 blocks. That's
huge. That's huge. Yeah, that is huge.
But after that, it just like and another thing was, who knows what's going through his head via the Bucks, because the Bucks, you remember that offseason they ripped apart their team. They Brandon Jennings was traded away. Monte Ellis they didn't resign him, and then they went 15-67 the next year. But they had the two gems on their team, which we know what happened. Middleton and Giannis, we know what happened. So
yeah,
which brings us to our final point of this podcast.
I got a quick gem real quick that I'm just looking on here reading.
Okay,
I didn't know this, that we traded for Kwame Brown. So it said the Bucks we got him from Golden State. Wait,
he was part of the. Wasn't he part of the? He was part of the Monte Ellis trade, wasn't he?
Yep.
And then the Bucks got rid of him.
Yep, they did, which makes sense. But he may have been, because even going back, and we'll have to do a non-Buck segment on Kwame Brown, because I went back and I really looked at his career, and I would not call him a bust at this point. And only
for number one pick, yes. For
number one pick, yes. I will say that. For number one pick, yes. He underachieved number one pick. But if you look at his stat sheets, I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but if you look at his stats and his minutes played, it actually adds up a little bit to why his stats were so low. But we can keep going with that. But I was like, whoa, I forgot we got Kwame Brown and then we released him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was just a throw-in piece in that trade. They really gave up a lot. They figured Andrew Bogut was the big man they needed, and they knew Stephen Curry was going to be the star. Yep. They had to choose, because Monte Ellis, you got to think about Monte Ellis. As good a player as he was, he only could really be a star on a bad team because it's just the way he played. He was never a guy you could build a championship team around. And the Warriors knew that, which is why they chose Stephen Curry, because they knew obviously what Steph Curry was going to be, and they were right.
The pedigree from Steph, like I'm starting to see it more now in the NBA. You're almost. It's almost a guarantee that a guy that's dad played in the NBA for substantial amount of time is going to be the better option than a guy like Monte Ellis.
Let me just say this real quick about Steph Curry. You remember, I think the Bucks said they didn't want him because of injury risk or something like that. I feel like I remember hearing that. So maybe I think it was the Bucks that said they wanted Monte Ellis instead of him.
But that was bad Bucks management. That's why I'm so glad the new management came in. I'm so glad the new management came in because we made a lot of decisions. I'm looking at the Wikipedia for it, and we made a lot of decisions like that.
Oh man,
bringing in OJ Mayo, like even like stuff like that. I'm like that. Those were terrible decisions. And he was another guy that was just he was out too much in the city. He was too involved in Milwaukee and less about basketball.
And he took partying to another level.
Oh yeah. And his little brother played at Marquette, so he had both brothers playing here at the same time. Like that'll never go well. That'll never go well.
And his brother never was that good of a player either. So
at all.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So we were talking about that 13-14 team and how bad it was, which brings me to our final segment of the podcast. That is that Bucks fans of today must appreciate the grind that it took to get to these glory days. And I'll let you get in on that one.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm just looking back as us talking today. We had a lot of I can see the bigger goal that they had, but they couldn't put it together. Even with like Ish Smith, Jabari Parker, like we had, because Jabari before the injury, Jabari was supposed to be the guy. Like coming out of Duke, Jabari was going to be the guy, and the Bucks organization started to put it together, but we could just never get over that hump. And I think the grind, and it's kind of a testament to Giannis, because Giannis, his work ethic, he brought a different work ethic to the Bucks organization,
and it rubbed off on the rest of the players.
It did, because I think he's a player that you have to work like him, or he's going to get you out of there. He has that power now, and he started to get that power a little bit early, where like, hey, he can go to the top guy, the GM, like, hey, we got to get this guy out of here. He's not in the gym. And it's starting to show now.
Kind of like MJ.
Exactly. It's MJ, Kobe, all the greats do it. LeBron even does it. All the greats do it. LeBron's a little bit more lenient on that, but the greats, that's why I say Giannis is a great, because he's one that he sees it like, okay, no, if you're not going to be on my level, then you got to go. Because his goal is to win, and he brought his brothers in, which is awesome. I guarantee we'll get another Antetokounmpo real soon. I guarantee one more is going to come pretty soon here.
Yeah, I think because Alex was the one that was like put in like the G League or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but and you mentioned like all those players like a Jabari Parker, Ish Smith. A big question, on the Parker point, do you think that Giannis and Jabari could have learned to coexist had Jabari not had all those injuries and they would have had more games on the court together? Or do you think those two there was just no way they could have ever coexisted because of their playing style? I
think the playing styles like contradicted themselves with each other. I don't, because
Jabari was like a Carmelo, if you remember.
And Jabari was a true four. He was a true forward, true power forward. I don't think he was a small forward enough because he couldn't defend. He wasn't quick enough. He didn't have he's like the prototypical great college basketball player. Mm-hmm. Where like he's a true tweener for a big to like a small, but at the college level, he's not defending guys that are more athletic than him. He's typically the best athlete on the court, or one of the better athletes on the court. And at the NBA level, he couldn't defend. And I think that's kind of why he got hurt, because he was trying to overextend himself athletically. I mean, some bad luck in that too, which always happens. But
especially with needs.
Yeah, with needs, it's kind of like it's a crapshoot with some stuff like that. With
Derrick Rose.
Yeah. We have to. I know we're a Bucks podcast, but we have to do a podcast on Derrick Rose. I went back and I watched his MVP season. Holy crap!
Yeah, honestly, I'll tell you something about Derrick Rose. Like I say, we'll talk about this in another podcast. But I got to make this comment. I've always said this to everyone. He was the best young phenom I had seen in the NBA since LeBron James.
I agree.
Yes, he was insane, man.
I've never seen anyone that explosive athletic. Like I guarantee he would have been a hell of a football player. If he didn't
Oh
play
yeah,
in high school, he would have been a hell of a football player.
yeah, he would have been receiver.
Oh yeah.
Man,
Oh yeah.
that's Randy Moss 2.0 right there.
Insane. And just his attitude to where he was just dunking on guys with no hesitation. Like just no fear at all.
Right. And you know what's funny about him? He wasn't even much of a trash talker either. He just he 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 talked trash with the mean look he'd get on his face. Man, he was just intense, but he was a man of few words. I love that about him.
And I know the Bucks were talking about the Bucks were in the running on getting them for this next year. I don't know if it's still, I don't know what happened with that. I didn't see the full like story.
I heard about that too.
If he would come to the Bucks, he would be a great 8 or 9 guy on the bench right now that can come
Great
in.
veteran leader.
Oh yeah, and like the way that he carries himself and kind of the way he worked through everything, like I would love to see Derrick Rose with the Bucks. I would love it, love it.
I would too. He'd be a good. The Derrick Rose will now be a good bench addition. I agree.
And he'd be a great guy for the playoffs.
Yeah, he would absolutely. So another question about those years though, was Jason Kidd the wrong coach? Was he not a good coach for that team? The Giannis credits him for making him the player he is. He credits Kidd a lot for it.
I actually like Jason Kidd as a coach. I know a lot of people don't, and I think he kind of gets a bad rap because of the DUIs and kind of the off the court stuff that he got into as a coach. But I do think that, like you said, like he was crucial in building Giannis from the get-go. And I remember him putting the ball in Giannis' hands really early.
That's what made Giannis so much of an all-around player, such a good passer, even though he never could play point guard. That was never going to work.
Yeah, no.
But like you said, but it really made him but putting the ball in his hands made him a more versatile player.
And it built confidence in him. Like the confidence level for Giannis took off when his confidence level shot up, when he realized, okay, I can be the guy on this team and the guy in this league. And that's when he started to grow so fast. And I think you got to attribute a lot of that to Jason Kidd about kind of giving him the keys. Because, Jason Kidd could have tried to pull him back a little bit, but Jason Kidd said, just go. And that early development was crucial for him.
Yep. But they just couldn't quite, under Kidd and just the groups of players they had, they just couldn't quite gel to the point to where they could really be a true contender. They were a good team. They were a tough out. Obviously those 2 playoff series against the Raptors and the Celtics, they were tough, but they just couldn't get over that hump until they brought in that system with Budenholzer, with the running, with the barrage of threes, the more efficient ball movement, the defense, and bringing in Brook Lopez was such an unsung addition.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
And then even that time
I was opposed to that when they signed him. I was like, why are they getting Brook Lopez? They're a running team. Why are they getting this? They're getting him? He's slow and lumbering, but he turned out to be the perfect fit.
Yeah, and he stretched it at a 4, but he also would get in there and bang if need be. And then the Greg Monroe signing, I think Malcolm Brogdon was really big in Giannis's development too.
Oh, explain that one. I didn't even think about that.
Malcolm Brogdon, so Giannis never really played. I know he had Chris with him when he came in, but Malcolm Brogdon solidified and put stability at the guard position.
Very much so.
To where he's a great decision maker, great player. Malcolm Brogdon's one of my favorite players. And how he carries himself off the court is amazing too. Like he's a solid dude. But before Drew Holiday and these guys, we never had that guard, true point guard that can hold it down and wasn't looking to score. He was just a basketball player. And I think that Malcolm Brogdon playing his role he did, it was the perfect 1, 2, 3 punch with him, Middleton, and Giannis all together to grow together. I wish we could have kept them all with the money. I know the money wouldn't have added up. So
plus they chose Bledsoe, which in hindsight was a mistake, but they chose Bledsoe over Brogdon. They had to make a choice. They chose Bledsoe. Shouldn't have, but what are you going to do?
And I think at the time that was kind of a toss up. I would at the time when they made that decision, I would have went probably Brogdon in hindsight, like you said, but I think that it was kind of a toss up there where Bledsoe was supposed to be a lot better than he was. He was supposed to be one of those elite level point guards. He was supposed to be what Drew Holiday is now.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so now we got about 30 seconds left. So I got one quick thing I want to run through. We can do this. Thon Maker was supposed to be what Brook Lopez was signed and became, but it just never happened.
And I'm gonna say I agree. I remember when they signed Thon Maker, and I think the big thing with him is he was a lot older than he said he was. And I think his his development wouldn't, when you get to that 24, 25 range and you think you're 20 years old, it's very, very hard to develop.
All right. Yep. Exactly. All right. Well, out of time for today's show. We'll be on next week. I'm John Giddings.
I'm Kenny Cams.
All right.
We are
Peace.
out.